Yeah. All right. 3, 2. And we are live with our live stream. So welcome to May for our second live stream for Ludonarrative Dissidents Season 2. We are going to be talking about Choose Your Own Adventures and a venerable form of interactive fiction, tabletop game design, and something worth checking out. And Discord just notified me that this is started. I'm Ross Payton, and I'm here with Greg Stolze and James Wallace. James, you're about to go to a tabletop event this weekend, right?
That's right, UK Games Expo, which is now officially the second largest English language tabletop event in the world. It's knocked Origins into the corner pocket. I think they were pushing 40,000. No, it's about 35,000 uniques last year, of over 40,000 attendees, but some of those are people who go out and come back again. It turns out in the convention world, there is no standard way of measuring how many people you get. So when Essen goes, oh yes, 200,000 people, and Gen Con goes 70,000 people, that is actually a lot closer than you would expect.
Yeah.
But so it's big. It's the NEC, the National Exhibition Centre, which is the National Exhibition Centre. It's the big one in the UK, just outside Birmingham. Thursday to really kind of Friday to Sunday. Thursday is set up and trade day primarily. But if you're in the area and this is the first you're hearing about it, perhaps come along. Probably not on the Saturday because it's madly busy.
We made it, baby. I think this gaming thing, it's not just gonna be a flash in the pan.
Oh yeah, I think it's got some legs. Yeah,
it's true. It's a good event. It's independent. It's run by guys who started off as a group of fans, and it's now basically their job. And they do a good job of it. I'll be running my game design masterclass, which sold out like that. Which is kind of scary. And otherwise, we'll probably be propping up the bar in Hilton.
Cool. I mean, swing by. Yeah, you'll be around, and you
Tell
can
them to fly me out next year, James. It'll be hilarious.
We could all do. We could do a live podcast there.
Oh yeah.
I'll do what I can. Yeah. You know, I have the ear of the organizers.
And if you want to contact James, you could join our Discord server on ludonarrativedissidents.com and ping him there. And of course, just joining Discord, we have a good community there. We have a lot of good discussions, and it is well worth joining. So, we're going to be talking about Choose Your Own Adventures today. One of our higher end backers for season 3, curated several episodes. Vetch, went a little above and beyond. As
considerably above and beyond.
So we're letting him curate a couple of the live streams too. So he wants us to talk about Choose Your Own Adventure stuff. There's very good memes on the Discord server too. That is 100% true. So Choose Your Own Adventure, if you're not familiar, is a written format type of tabletop game where you're reading a book and it tells you, a branching narrative where you get to make choices by going to different page numbers. So say if you want to go to the left in this maze, go to page 5. You want to go to the right, turn to page 13, and so on and so forth. This is a venerable form because this actually, the earliest known example of this is from 1930. Consider the Consequences, written by Doris Webster and Mary Alden Hopkins. And you get to, and it's been ported to Twine, which we'll talk about later. But this is a should a girl marry advice against the advice of her parents? So you could defy her family and marry Jed, or be as prudent as her parents are like, and refuse a marriage. And so this book was written in 1930, and no one
Wow.
really paid attention to it. And then
from what I understand, it did okay, but nobody then followed up.
Yeah.
There was a chap a few years ago who had a fascinating Twitter feed in which he was basically, I think this was research for his PhD, and every so often he'd post, "I found the earliest. It's from 1948 or something, and it's map based, but each map is a page in the book, and you're moving between them. And no, I found another one, and then he found this one. And as far as I know, I'm completely blanking on his name, which is kind of embarrassing because I had a conversation with him about possibly putting it back into print, which went nowhere in the end.
Yeah,
sure.
But it is fascinating. I don't know if you guys have read it, because one of the things.
The problem with this, and I think the reason that it did not immediately spawn a squad of imitators is, can you guess? Did you guess sexism? Because it's always sexism. If this had been invented by a man who was going down to his club and getting all his, his posse from university, this is the next stage of literature. It becomes interactive.
Yeah,
absolutely. We probably would have hit Dungeons and Dragons like 40 years earlier. We'd be second generation instead of first.
World War II would have been fought over system wars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. The Edition Wars got too real. So, yeah, it's kind of this interesting, like, very early iteration of the idea. And then I think there was something in the 1950s. And then, of course, the major thing that started this was choose your own adventure.
There were a couple before that, a couple of series, in fact, before that, in the I think the late 60s even. And the principle was also used for software training manuals. And the Oulipo, the French experimental writing group, did a very short one called A Story As You Like It, which starts off, would you like to read a story? This is a story about 3 green beans. Would you like to read a story about 3 green beans? And if you go no, it takes you to a paragraph. This is a story about 3 green peas, and it's a tech demo in prose form. It's fascinating. But yeah, in the States, choose your own adventure, which is a trademarked term, incidentally. So be careful how you use it. People do get sued for using it, for claiming that their game or something is a choose your own adventure. And in the UK, Fighting Fantasy, which was a few years later, 1982, I think, or 1983, was Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson, who had set up Games Workshop, then created the Fighting Fantasy range, which I think is now over 70 or 80 books.
The Cave of Time. I played it. Played it or read it? Which do we say? Because my immediate instinct was to say I played that.
And then Fighting...
Warlock of Firetop Mountain.
Warlock of Firetop
British
Mountain.
People love to talk about the Warlock of Firetop Mountain.
They have sold a lot of those. And the Warlock of Firetop Mountain is a dungeon bash, very much. But they moved away from that quite quickly. But structurally, Choose Your Own Adventure and the Fighting Fantasies are quite different if you break down the flowcharts. I can get incredibly geeky about it. I used to lecture in interactive narrative at university.
Let's do like middle geeky. Like,
middle.
Not full House of Brick geeky, but like House of Sticks geeky.
Yeah.
Okay, House of Sticks geeky. The Choose Your Own Adventure stuff, the flowcharts branch and branch and branch and branch. So the stories that you go through are much shorter, but are much more diverse. Whereas the Warlock of Firetop Mountain is essentially one flow that branches and then regroups, and then branches and regroups. It's very easy to do with the dungeon structure, less easy to do with a narrative structure, but they started to work out ways to do it. And then quite quickly realized that the market was so big that they needed other people to come in and write this stuff for them, notably Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. That Steve Jackson is British Steve Jackson, for those who don't know.
I was going to ask which.
But American Steve Jackson did write one of the titles for the Fighting Fantasy line. So Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone present.
Neither one of them could bear to give up and be Steven Jackson.
I think they were both established by that time.
Yeah.
You know? And I think they knew each other as well. Hobby gaming in the late 70s, early 80s
Yeah.
was not big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly bought my first copy of Car Wars and Ogre in Games Workshop in Dowling Road, the first one in West London.
Mm-hmm.
So structurally, narratively, they're quite different forms. And there was some brilliant innovation.
1982, I would have been 12. Right. I was never exposed to Warlock of Firetop Mountain, but man, those choose your own adventures, I went through those like crazy. I honest to God still quote one of them. What was the choose your own adventure that had you were on a spaceship called the Aloha, which you see if you can find that. Because there's a part in there where like you're on the ship, the away team is on the planet below, something terrible's happening up top, something terrible happening down to, it's like, okay, do you tough it out and wait for the away team to return, or do you leave orbit, do a once around and come back figuring that, they can take care of themselves for a couple hours despite the, I don't know, rain of sulfur or whatever it was. And I'm pretty sure the first time I played it, I'm like, no, I have to stay and wait for those people. And it got some bad adventure. So the next time I wound up at that juncture, I'm like, I guess I'll just skulk away like a coward. And so you turn to what I considered the skulk away like a coward option, not that one. And it's like, well, you can't save the crew if you don't save the ship. And I'm like, wait, this makes a lot of sense. Is this a piece of actual actionable life advice coming to me through literature?
Let's see here. I think the one you're looking at is the Third Planet from Alistair. There's actually, unsurprisingly, a fan wiki for Choose Your Own Adventure.
Maybe?
And you're part of the crew of the Aloha. So, yeah. Of course, my favorite is the one I showed just previously, which was
Vampire?
Space Vampire, because it's so dumb. I love Space Vampire. He's in space. There's no day, there's no night.
The sun never rise. In space, sunrise never comes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hold on. If you listeners don't know, I've got the COVID for the very first time. I dodged it for 4 years, then got it on my my recent vacation. So I'm trying to get the really raspy, rumbly pack-a-day voice instead of the nasal, cloggy, but voice. I don't know exactly where I'm hitting on the Tom Waits to Gilbert Gottfried continuum. The one I remember, so I never had access to the Fighting Fantasy books or but I read tons of the Choose Your Own Adventure books from the library. But the one I really remember, my friends got into, were the Lone Wolf series, because
Joe Diva, X Games Workshop.
Yeah, because not only did this have Choose Your Own Adventure elements, also had RPG elements, in that you would actually level up your character and improve your abilities. And there was like a fighting system. So it's more a solo role-playing game than a Choose Your Own Adventure, where there was continuity between books. So like, and you were really screwed if you didn't get like book 2, because book 2 introduced the Summer Sword, which is this incredibly powerful magical item.
Wait, weapon. That's not how you spell sword.
Well, it's magical. That's how that works.
I believe. My disbelief is not broken by magic that can violate the laws of physics, but the laws of grammar are the domain of humankind. This is magic. This is just branding.
Yeah, so it's a brand.
What are its special powers? You could marketing +3 marketing.
because oh yeah, so here the Summer Sword, because it was incredibly powerful, it was the only thing that could kill some of the big bads of the series, the Dark Lords, and you could only get it in like Dark or Book 2 or whatever. So if you later on, like Book 6, if you didn't have it, you were like, oh well. And in fact, oh yeah, there's a controversy. It's believed it had a negative effect on the overall difficulty of the game books. The sword's bonus made it difficult to create balance statistics for enemies, those that would challenge someone with the weapon but not overwhelm someone without it. So fights became more difficult if the Summer Sword is used. Yeah, I just love the idea that you had to get book 2 out of 31 in order to get this one magic item that made otherwise it threw the entire balance off.
Oh yeah, if you're playing Lord of the Rings, what you need to do is get one of the Rings of the Power right away. If you got one of those in your party, you might make it. If you don't have any Rings of Power in your party, you're pretty much borked. The minute you hit a Balrog or some shit, they're just gonna smear you across the landscape.
Oh sure. So like most choose your own adventure books are like standalone things, and I know so Lone Wolf was kind of an exception to that. James, there was a UK one, wasn't there, where there was like continuity between books in the series, or like it was
the Fabled Lands series, Dave Morris and Jamie Thompson. Jamie, who had been editor of White Dwarf in its glory days in the early mid 80s. And Dave, who had been one of the principal writers for it. Dave was my best man in when I got married in 2006. I should just drop that in there. But yeah, the Fabled Lands book. Each book is a country, essentially, or an area of the world. And so you can walk literally from one book into another book, have a bunch of adventures, get a bunch of items, and some of them quest items, walk back to the first book to finish quests, which it is impossible to finish without visiting separate books. I think they've just done book 8 or book 9 or something. It's taken a long time for this series to
come together.
They are Dave is a brilliant writer. He's very informed by that kind of Vancian style of characters who clever dialogue, witty characters with their own motivations.
Nice.
And there's a keyword system as well. So if you revisit a location, there is a chance it may have changed. It may be different simply because time has passed or because of something you did. They are, in terms of the sophistication of the form, probably taking it about as far as it can go. They're also beautifully illustrated by the late Russ Nicholson. Just if you've not experienced, there are apps, but get the books if you can. I think they're all still in print, not their original printers, but really, really good, really clever. But again, it's fantasy stuff. It's sword and sorcery. It's that escapist stuff.
I never would have guessed it was sword and sorcery based on the title, "The Serpent King's Domain."
Yeah,
that's.
But people have taken it and done other things with it. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Kim Newman. I don't know how well known Kim Newman is outside the UK. If you're a Warhammer fiction fan, he wrote the good Warhammer novels.
Kim Newman is a character in Midnight Pals, so we all know Kim Newman. Yeah,
he's that Kim Newman. Wrote the Anno Dracula novels as well, noted film critic over here. But he did a novel about 1999, I think.
Was Anno Dracula him, or was that Fred Saberhagen?
I think it was Saberhagen.
Hang on.
Anyway. Yeah.
Well,
no, it was Kim Newman. Sorry, yeah. Go on.
Yeah, there we go. He wrote a book called Life's Lottery, which came out from a major publisher, and I think they were trying to take the solo game book form mainstream in the kind of the way you were suggesting might have happened in the 1930s. And it starts off, you're in the play, it's your first day at school, you're in the playground, and a group of bigger boys surround you. And it's the late 60s, early 70s. They ask, who is your favorite man from U.N.C.L.E.? Is it Napoleon Solo or Ilya Kuryakin? And the answer you give determines the path of the rest of your life. It's quite brilliant. And it does the choose your own adventure thing. It divides and divides and divides. But once you have died, which you will, and it won't take that long to get there, you then get a chance to do it all again. And it's written differently. Very, very clever. Kim is a brilliant writer. He's really, really smart. This is a very, very smart piece of writing. You can end up as prime minister. You can die of a heroin overdose in a ditch. It's that kind of diversity. Rewards endless replaying, endless experimentation. So, I mean, people have tried to take it mainstream. They've tried to do stuff with it, and it's never, at least thus far, it's not gelled. And people have tried to do it with other genres as well. I'm not proud. I used to edit porn novels back in the day because the people publishing them were also publishing Doctor Who novels at the time. Literally, it was the same company.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, pays the bills. And a friend of mine did or attempted to do porn-based solo game books or kind of sexy romance solo game books.
Okay, romance. I could see that. Yeah.
But they didn't. Stick.
How explicit are we? Because I mean,
well, the porn was very. The game books, yeah, I think so. But again, I just don't think the market wanted the interactivity. They wanted to read or they wanted to watch.
Right.
They didn't want to have to stop and think.
Can I digress?
Yes, of course.
To me, the difference between pornography and erotica, is that erotica is literature that is about explicit sex, but it performs the functions of literature of maybe probing at stuff you're not fully comfortable with, right? Like Lolita or In Praise of the Stepmother, right? Whereas pornography is just like, this is like a McDonald's hamburger. You have a very good idea of the unchallenging content you are going to receive, and you can, you can pick off your menu, but nobody, I don't think people read pornography to be surprised and intrigued and challenged. And to me, that's the difference.
I think you're. I think there's a simpler distinction. I think the distinction is you can't knock one out to erotica.
But you can, James.
If you work at it. That is not the intention. But yeah, I take your point.
I don't know.
It does seem to fit very well with the same kind of genres that role-playing games do very well. I think that's interesting. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about is the complete overlap, where the thing overlaps with role-playing games itself, because a number of games, TSR did the Endless Quest series of books, and then they did a series of big format illustrated solo game books called the Catacombs series, some of which were Forgotten Realms tie-ins, which are massively. I got one to review back in the late 80s, I think, and it was great, really smart, and mechanically really smart. There was a bookmark that you inserted at a random page, and when you turned to that, when the book instructed you to turn randomly to that page and the bookmark fell out, you encountered the NPC who was printed on the bookmark. That was great, really fun.
That's super
great
fun.
Artwork. Alan Varney did one called Night of the Living Dead, Night with a K, in which you're a paladin who's been reanimated by a lich, which is and told to do evil things, but you're a paladin.
That's I'm kind of in love with that concept. Wow, that's
it's a good concept.
That's
and the title as well. It's too good. Alan is again very underrated.
Wow.
But there have been a bunch of games that have used solo adventures within the rulebook itself to introduce as a soft onboard.
How well do you think that works? I mean, because we are talking about, fiction where the page punches back with tabletop role-playing games in a lot of ways, and that's your choose your own adventure too. But to me, gaming is fundamentally social. It's all about I'm gonna encounter Jose's random thing, and that's going to influence my random thing, and that's going to influence Violet's random thing. And we are going to wind up 3 degrees more random than anything we might have done individually. And so to me, This was why 1,000-Year-Old Vampire seemed so fascinating to me, because I'm like, wow, it's just by yourself. There's no Jose and Violet and other players to steal the spotlight from. It's all just me. So it felt different and yet the same at the same time. And I would wonder how much was it Tim Hutchings? Tim Hutchings wrote 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. That sounds that feels right.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I'm curious how much of a influence or inspiration Choose Your Own Adventure novels were, because this is, I mean, 1,000-Year-Old Vampire has a lot less choice, but it also is a lot more amorphous. It's like a series of vases you're filling with varying degrees of water, but you don't choose your way between them nearly as much.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these are, it's a Garden of Forking Paths situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is mentioned in the Wikipedia page, the Borgia story. I mean, I think for me, it's the difference between a multiplayer, like there are games you can play by yourself, like, Solitaire. Like it's just a long-standing tradition to have games that are they're essentially puzzles and things for you to focus and gain, pleasure, having fun with by yourself. I mean, the majority of video games I think are still single player, or have at least a single player mode. So I think this is an analog equivalent of being able to because there's also sort of in a comparison between Choose Your Own Adventure and like fan fiction. Like, why do people write fan fiction? Well, they wanted Spock and Kirk to kiss, and so like that idea. And so Choose Your Own Adventure is we're just going to have a story where there is no canonical path, and you get to see, if you want Spock and Kirk to kiss, go to page 8. If you want them to stay platonic friends and kick the Klingons' ass, go to page 18. So I think there are different types of fun than a multiplayer game.
This is a novel about gay starships.
Yeah.
Gay starship officers. Do you want to read a novel about gay starship officers? No.
Why not?
This is a novel about starship officers deep in battle with the Klingons. Do you want to read it?
And there's no subtext. It's all text. Yeah.
Well, can I plug a couple
sure.
modern they're not Choose Your Own Adventure books.
I mean, that's the thing. It's also
choosable path, a choosable path adventure.
Oh yeah.
So these are by Ryan North.
Mm-hmm.
It's how does he describe it? A choosable path adventure by Ryan North, William Shakespeare, and you. Mm-hmm. So it is Hamlet as choose your own, as in various ways, illustrated by various comics giants, and being written by Ryan North. It's extremely funny and irreverent, and I should have, if I had been healthy, I would have played through that one and Romeo or Juliet. I would have played through these before this live stream, but I've been sick. So
I mean, and if you had, that's only one path you could have found, or maybe a few. Like it's a thing. I've had the same book. It's a pretty big book. There's a lot of different paths. There's a lot of different things that can happen out of that. So let's see. I wasn't part of that, but
I mean, you want to hear can I read something I just turned to at random?
Sure.
162. This is the ending you wanted, huh? 2 senior citizen ghosts in love but kind of bored, deep inside the dying heart of a red giant sun. Well, good news. Against all odds, you found it in this book, a book that was originally titled, Oh Cool, Rich Heterosexual Teens in Love. You and Juliet stretch out and relax inside the red giant sun. The torrent of flame around you is nice. It's nice.
It's nice.
I finally don't feel so cold all the time, you say. The end.
Wow.
I like this comment from Release Days. I wasn't part of that, but a lot of French RPG fans were introduced to the hobby via the Dark Eye Choose Your Own Adventure books and subsequent RPG. It is still the most popular. I know. Yeah, I knew. I guess it would be. Yeah, it's a very popular German RPG. It's been translated into English and obviously French. And I didn't even know that they had game books for it. But I mean, that makes sense a lot. That was very popular in the 80s to make a Choose Your Own Adventure for your RPG. As we mentioned, TSR did. Yeah.
Brian Rambos also mentioned Advanced Fighting Fantasy, which was edited by Mark Gascoigne, who was my best man at my first wedding. It's not literally incestuous, the British gaming community, but it gets close to it at times. Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the rules were interesting, okay, but the world, Titan, was beautifully realized, and the early books are very collectible if you can get hold of them. They're still in print. Out of the Pit as well, the collection of monsters, just really nicely put together with panache and imagination. You were talking comic strips. You said illustrated by Comics Giants. Reminded me of Dice Man, which Ross, I linked to in the private chat. Dice Man was a comic by the people who put out 2000 AD, but it's solo gamebook style stories, choose your own adventure stories in comic form, with art by the likes of David Lloyd, who did V for Vendetta, Steve Dillon, Brian Talbot, Gary Leach, Kevin O'Neill, Hunt Emerson. And the reason I mention this, the reason it's come to mind is Rebellion have just republished. They only did 5 issues. They've republished all 5 issues in a single volume, which will set you back 40 quid for the hardback. But the art is gorgeous. The stories are fine, but it's
like, maybe if they were illustrated by Mobius. Come on.
I will take Gary Leach. Gary Leach, who did the early episodes of Marvel Man, which became Miracle Man.
Okay.
At his peak, which this was the early 80s. Oh my God, that man was one of the finest comics artists in the world.
Show me. You can say it, but it's a visual medium, James.
If you send me some links, I'll put them up on the thing.
Someone
put up.
There's a link in the private chat to the sales page. If you can then click on thumbnails of 5 of the pages. Right. I'm pretty sure the second one, the Slain page, is Gary Leach, though not actually at the height of his power.
There was a question someone put up here. At what point is a TTRPG not a choose your own adventure, excluding dungeon modules, that is? It's not a choose your own adventure because, as we discussed, choose your own adventure is copyrighted. So, you're choosing an adventure which is your own, but it's not a choose your own adventure.
Oh yeah, so this let's see here. You can see here.
That's pretty good.
Will you give him a clout and tell him to look harder? Go to 14. Wait till the moon sheds some light. Sheds some light. Go to 26. Look for another way in. Go to 50. Okay, yeah, that's very cool. I'd never heard of a comic version of this. Yeah,
and it's all the great. There's You Are Judge Dredd is one of them.
That's why they can charge 40.
Yeah, no joke.
There you go.
Everyone
Who's the artist on that one? Brian Talbot doing Judge Dredd. Oh wow!
Classic. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, cool stuff.
Let's see here. The world of RPG podcasting, the whole countries came to RPGs by fighting fantasy game books. That makes sense. It's interesting. Yeah, there's always interesting to see how certain scenes, like in Japan got Dungeons and Dragons, and then people started recording their game sessions and transcribing it as replays, but then they couldn't, some fans couldn't get the rights to republish D&D, so they made their own RPG called Sword World, and that became its own thing, and now is way more popular in Japan than D&D. So it's interesting the evolution of gaming, tabletop gaming in different countries, because of what took off and what didn't.
And it's hard to predict. It's like the Burgess Shale, right? Mm-hmm. Where you can see the evolutionary flow through millions of years, but you're like, yeah, you know, a lot of this shit's just random. It's which brings us back to, oh, so Napoleon Solo or Ilya Ukraine. So, oh, and we're losing Ra. He's vanished into the aether.
This gives me a moment to talk about the games that or books that kind of subvert the form. There is an amazing thing which I have a copy somewhere, or I may have lent it to somebody anyway. I can't locate it. It looks like a choose your own adventure book. It is called Love is Not Constantly Wondering If You Are Making the Greatest Mistake of Your Life.
Good title.
And it is simultaneously an adventure in which your spaceship has crashed on the planet of the ant women or the ant creatures, and you must find the ant queen and defeat them. But at the same time, you are a 20-something living, I think, in Seattle or Portland, in a relationship with an unrepentant alcoholic, and you are trying to survive that. And it is brilliant. It looks, I mean, just for the fact that
how are both of these plot lines reconciled?
Occasionally you will just find yourself most of it is about being in the relationship. There we go. I mean, you see what I mean? It's the livery of the choose your own adventure.
Wow. Yeah, that's the trade dress. All right. That's
you know, you'll be going, you know, okay, so you don't follow her down the street. What happens? Oh, I'm on the ant planet now. It doesn't quite work. But it's so audacious that it almost doesn't matter. It's so clever, and it's such a subversion of the form, because an awful lot of it is just you only have one or two choices, and they're both the wrong choice.
Oh no!
Yeah. And who hasn't been in that situation?
Oh sure,
it's
and
really smart. It's like you can pick it up for like $10. I would recommend it.
Yeah, it came in only 12 years ago, so it might still be available as ebook. I have to look.
Thematically, what that reminds me of is
that's
the video game Night in the Woods, right? Which has a lot of these branching, which is in many ways a branching, forking paths narrative, and that's the structure. But there was a part where you're arguing with your friend. You're the little cat, and you're arguing with the alligator, and the dialogue options are basic, you know, they boil down to basically just variations of the same thing while you're arguing about whether there's free will or not. I'm like, okay, that's yep.
Yeah, in this case,
it is great. It's a great game.
Yeah. In this case, Night of the Woods is more like not choose your own adventure. Was the other one where you're talking about earlier, the one that's like a dungeon where you always loop back to the main narrative at the
Fighting Fantasy.
So it's more like that, where with Night of the Woods there are variations, like which friend do you spend more time with, but the ending always kind of goes back to the same point. It's not as branched out as like a choose your own adventure novel would be. Book would be. But yeah, no, great narrative. Yeah, lots of like it, which makes it very replayable, because like I played with one friend, but focusing on them and finding out more about them, so I could play it again and focus on this other, you know, the friend I neglected. Yeah.
What's the name of the poetess that you meet really early on? Because I'm like, this is the best. I would.
Oh yeah.
I hope there's a chance. I hope I get the option to die for her. You never get the option to die for her.
Escape Dark Sector. So that's an interesting thing. Dark Castle. I have played this. If it's the one I'm thinking of. Let's see here. That is a video game.
Dark Castle, where the hamburgers are giant and really good, but they're very expensive.
I reviewed this for Tabletop Gaming. And it was created by the guy who'd introduced me to the editor of Tabletop Gaming, and I did not give it a good review, which has breached a friendship.
Which was what? Was Escape Dark Sector?
Escape the Dark Castle was the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a dice game, basically. You turn over cards. You take, I can't remember how many cards it is, which create your adventure. You each have a character. You're escaping from a dark castle. If any of the characters die, but it's very much in the style of. It wants to evoke the style and the atmosphere of the fighting fantasy books in particular. The art is nowhere near as good as the fighting fantasy books, because they had Russ Nicholson and people like that doing just some of the best work of their career. But the idea is you turn over the card and there's your encounter, and you're wandering through this dungeon and there's a lizard man, and your choice is fight it or die, presumably. There aren't enough choices is the main thing. There's no structure to the story. It's just random encounters one after another, and in a series that makes no sense. And almost always all that you can do is fight these things. Or there will be a simple yes, no, a binary choice.
Yeah, I've played this too, and it's a co-op. It's a co-op board game, really, a card game, and it plays more like a roguelike, because it's a randomized dungeon, and you all escape, and you decide to it's rolling dice, and there are a couple choices you have to make about whether do we investigate the corpse or move on, do we do this or do we do that, or which item do I use this round, or let's figure out our best strategy for rolling dice to defeat this monster. But it's just
I played it recently with Patchwork Fez, actually, who is commenting away. It reinforced my original thoughts on it. It's fine. It passes the time. But if what you're after is a narrative game that creates any kind of story that you're going to remember, nope, it's not. It's not going to do that. It's no Tales of the Arabian Nights.
No.
Somebody else up the stream mentioned Bandersnatch, which I did not play.
I did.
Okay. I was going to mention the Kimmy Schmidt one.
Well, let me pull up the Wikipedia for the Bandersnatch thing so I can give some context. So the show Black Mirror, it's on Netflix, and they made an interactive episode called Bandersnatch, which if you have a Netflix subscription, you can still try. And you just make choices, using your remote to pick one or two. And so, it's an interactive film, which is not a book. So, but these branching narrative things, a lot of people figured out how to make interactive branching story narratives through different media. Like books were first, but through cards or through films or through obviously video games. And so, the average viewing is 90 minutes. There are 150 minutes of unique footage divided into 250 segments, yielding 1 trillion possible paths. I think I played it multiple times. And once you play it the first time, you can kind of skip things you've seen before to get to the new video. And it's fine. It's well made. I couldn't tell you anything about it. It did not. I mean, I watched it back when it came out. Yeah, I mean, it came out years ago. So 6 years ago. So
there were, and they had these. They tried this. I remember with the VCR, right? There were these interactive games. Where it's like, okay, now fast forward the tape to, and it just absolute. The reach of the ambition exceeding by far the grasp of the technology.
Those aren't those aren't the things. They're just gimmicks. Dragon Strike is the one I can think of, which was also a TSR project, and the VHS is kind of a timer where it plays an intro video and then stop, do this special rule, stop, do this now, and
there were a bunch of those. Annoying. Atmosphere was the big one, I think.
Yeah, Atmosphere was another one.
I don't remember. I see. These aren't the ones I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of more non-genre stuff, or there was a Western one or something. Or to bounce again, the what was the arcade game?
Mad Dog McCree.
Ooh, there's Mad Dog McCree. There were a couple are you talking about the animated one with the knight going through the castle?
Yeah, and that was Ralph Bakshi, right?
Yeah. Ralph. Yeah, that's
Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair. Yeah, Dragon's Lair is a traditional video game. It just with very few paths, but it had like timing things where you had to hit the right time in order to avoid getting zapped by lightning or whatever. I mean, it's on Steam now. You can just play it. But so yeah, it's just a regular ass video game.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
just
to
watch,
the extent
watch a
that
playthrough.
Yeah, just watch it play.
Dirk the Daring. Hell yeah.
But yeah, see, you would have to like the gameplay is like it would give a flash of a prompt and you would have to hit that prompt. And if you didn't hit that prompt, your character would die and you have to start over. See, like you have to go to the
kids
left.
Today call quick time events.
Yes, that's exactly it. And so you have to go to the left to dodge a lightning bolt, and then you go on, and the difficulty is that it's a very tight window. And if you'd have to start over, so that's
it's Don Bluth, not
Don Bluth, not
Don
Becky.
Bluth.
Yeah.
I always mix those guys up too. But yeah, like I think the fun of a choose your own narrative. Yeah, so for me, I think the choose your own narrative fun is the, here's a story, but like here's many ways it can end.
Right.
See how many times you want to see it end, but like, but then other games are more tactical where it's like, can you get through these I mean, Dragon's Lair is just, can you hit the button fast enough?
Which I never could. I couldn't even get past the first thing.
I do remember there's also, you just make wrong choices, like which way do you go? And if there's only one right way, every other way leads to death. So but yeah, there's a lot of variation in this format, as we talked about interactive films, and you said there was a Kimmy Schmidt episode that did that too.
Kimmy versus the Reverend. So if you ever want to see America's Sweetheart, the Wendy's hamburgers looking eternal optimist shoot a helpless man in the face, that's your option.
I think the sort of the real legacy of this though is interactive fiction, which
not to be confused with James's Magazine.
Interactive fantasy, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, the first text adventures were around in the mid 70s.
Zork
Cave, which became Zork, and followed in fairly short order. 1978 was the first multi-user dungeon, the first MUD out of University of Essex. Richard Bartle. Do I name drop? I won't bother. It's a tedious anecdote. But yeah, he essentially multiplayer online gaming in this form, over the internet rather than over a network, invented in Britain in the late 70s, and very, very similar. But the form kind of, what we think of as solo game books being presented with multiple choices and having to choose one of them rather than typing words in that an internal parser then deciphers, has been reinvented. You mentioned Twine earlier on, Ross, in passing. Twine, for those who don't know it, is a very, very simple engine that anyone can use to create flowcharted text-based adventures. You write some text. Anything you put, as I recall, in square brackets becomes a link to a fresh paragraph, essentially, a fresh section, and the link to it is auto-generated. Very, very simple to use. I did, as a proof of... No, I used a wiki for that. I'm digressing. But it's very easy to convert fighting fantasy books or anything similar to it, or to create your own. I used it as a tool when I was teaching interactive narrative and interactive storytelling. It's free to use. It's just twine. I think it's .org. I could be wrong. You can do it in the browser. You can. There's a downloadable Twinery. Yes, thank you.
That makes me think of Twinery.
well worth kicking around and looking what's there, because there's stuff you can't do much. You can get under the hood and do some basic programming with it to use sound and stuff like that. There are some really, really great things out there. I'm trying to remember the name of Cara Ellison's adventure. Give me a sec. But yeah, people doing really, really clever storytelling things. And it's essentially the same format. You're given a bunch of choices. Quite often it's directional, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And there are competitions. just exploring. It is the easiest way to explore, because back in the day, I wrote solo adventures for my fanzine in the 80s. And that was graph paper and laboriously working out, even when I was doing Sonic game books in the early 90s, again, all the flowcharting was by hand, because if you wanted to buy flowcharting software back then, it was several £100 and used its own ersatz interface, because Windows at the time was shit. But let's not go there. Yes, my system is trying to encourage me to update to Windows 11, and I will not let it. But yeah,
but James, it'll capture every keystroke, won't it?
Yeah, and tell me to use co-host and stuff. God, I used Bing by accident today. Christ, that's a piece of shit. I'm sorry, I'm very tired.
No,
and digressing, but Twine makes it so easy. You don't. It's all the tools are there. You don't have to think about the coding. You don't have to think about the mechanics of it. All you're thinking about is the story and the choices you're giving the players.
Wow.
It's the reader. It's so much fun to use. I recommend it very highly. I use it from time to time if I'm working on that kind of interactive thing as a just a way of structuring this stuff. And I did a few years ago do a project for Dyson, which was essentially a kind of an online treasure hunt, but the final chapter of it was written entirely in Twine.
The vacuum cleaner people?
Sorry?
The vacuum cleaner people?
The vacuum cleaner people, yeah. Okay. They were doing it as part of a recruitment campaign.
Okay.
And the thing was, the idea was you get stuck in a Dyson research lab and you have to MacGuffin a thing together out of the various prototypes that are lying around that will hit all the right buttons and cut off the sensors in exactly the right time in exactly the right order. And then you had to work out the optimum path to do it, count how many steps there are, and the two numbers you got from that were the final clue that you needed to solve the thing. Really, really proud of it. It was really, really fun to do.
That sounds like something that would make me feel dumb as hell. Yes, that was with
Mink. Patchwork Fairs answering our mutual friend Minkette, a brilliant London-based game designer who I love dearly. So full of ideas.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to see a Dyson escape room. That would be a vacuum-based.
It would suck.
We'll just suck our way out of this one.
Okay, I need to start putting the soundboard for next time we do live stream. Put a little rim drop.
We'll just get our own vuvuzelas, Ross. We're gonna ride this Ludonarrative Dissidents property right into the ground, dig a little grave for it, throw it in, jump in after it, pull the dirt down on ourselves, vuvuzela-ing all the way.
So one of our patrons, that's actually someone in the Discord linked to an interesting article, a graphical dog fight.
Ace of Aces, yes. Which became they used the same system for the Lost Worlds books, which were fantasy combat books, in which you could take any books in the 30-book series and fight a skeleton against a hill giant, or the Valkyrie against an orc.
Oh man, that's great. That's like when you were a kid, when you would put bugs in a jar and shake the jar to make them fight.
Yeah,
I do not endorse this, but it's the same impulse. It sounds like, only much more humane.
And this is mid 80s, so computers not up to this level of graphics and this kind of semi-strategic combat.
This simplicity of play. You look at a picture of the game state, you choose a move, you and your opponent turn to the page number for each other's moves. You look up your move on that intermediate page and turn to that page number, which is a new game state. Repeat. There are no dice, no counters, no moving parts. You don't even need to be at the same place as your opponent. You just need to be able to give each other page numbers. It takes less than a minute to learn how to play, and it creates a quick fire play that makes total sense in the seat of your pants. Early aviation era. Oh, wow. Error correction is effortlessly built in. If you don't end up on matching page numbers, one of you goofed. And you have a first-person view. So, all the graphics you need. So, yeah. Amazing. That's very cool. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that could improve it would be if the name was "Fuck You, Red Baron." But
Well, that's the new remake. That'll be the Merkborg version of it. We'll get some punk artists to do it, and
if you,
yeah. Yeah.
let's see. What do you think? So where do you think Choose Your Own Adventure's failure point is at? I mean, what do you mean by failure point?
Like, why isn't it popular now? Because I mean, like back in Choose Your Own.
It was popular at the time, and as a niche thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think now the same itch is
Mm-hmm.
very easy to scratch, on itch. You can get any one of thousands of branching narrative. Oh, I want to pick between my forks, and it's probably easier and a little cheaper.
I mean, personally, I think, it's that the lessons of game design and narrative design, interactive fiction design, that Choose Your Own Adventure have.
Aaron is correct. Yes.
Yeah. Not cover your own ass. Sorry, just as much as me, I bet. Yeah. So I personally, I think it's because like all the lessons, all the things you can do in Choose Your Own Adventure, you could do in other games now. They've incorporated those kind of branching narrative effects, and they just added so much more to it. Like look at games like Baldur's Gate 3, where people are still, a year later or months later, still talking about who they romance and like replaying it to see it from different angles. Oh, I'm going to be a good guy this time. I'm going to be a bad guy. So it's like Choose Your Own Adventure, but with so much more, and that means it's so much
dimensions.
More immersive. Yeah, more dimensions.
I mean, if it had become a prestige product, if like the intellectuals of the 80s my God, had embraced the form and been like, this is so far superior to traditional narrative. This is the next dimension of literary thought. And you had, everybody who, and it became like hyper legitimate, and they were published in leatherback volumes. Then it would survive, because the obvious its obvious weaknesses compared to having a computer do it would be cloaked by prestige, presumably quality of writing, and the hardback glory of the publication. But as it is, I mean, the technology moved on, man. We can do everything.
The point of failure in Choose Your Own Adventure books is the book. It's just moved on. If you look at the Choices app, which will be on your mobile phone or is available for your mobile phone, hundreds of millions of users playing through what are basically interactive narratives with artwork, paying for the privilege. I believe you can create your own content for it and upload it and potentially be paid for it. Or I may be thinking of a different platform. But essentially, it's the same content. And this is where the romance stuff has worked. This is where that format has found its user base. People who are basically playing through the equivalent of soap operas and soap opera style plots.
Choose romance stories you play. Oh, what a terrible cover!
Hugely popular. And it's same format. It may not be the genres that we like, but
we don't
yuck on
this
other
is a great
yum.
idea, but the covers are hurting me. Look at that. That's just bad art. That's just
Greg
bad
has just
art.
put a stop to this art. Yeah.
That arm doesn't look like a proper arm. Something's wrong. I'm in the uncanny valley, and I'm afraid.
Yeah. But so there is a demand for it, but it's evolved into the more people, water rolls downhill. People will play or absorb the thing that's most convenient for them, like getting a book that you have to flip through and stuff, as opposed to a phone where you push on buttons. That's obviously going to be why watch a movie on your Blu-ray player if you just push a button and watch Netflix. So same kind of theory here. But there are more examples of more complex things. Like there's King of Dragon Pass, which is a fantasy game set in Glorantha, I believe, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And this took years to develop, and it's a interactive, immensely replayable interactive fiction, but like with graphics. So you make choices, and it keeps track of these choices, and so there's many stories
Hope
for
it
your
goes
character.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know
But
the old Italian
but
saying
it's all
about
just
that, do you, buddy?
making reading text. Like they added graphics, but they added text, but it's primarily text, and all your
Yeah.
decisions are just choice points, you know.
Yeah, but
And
it's always different. I mean, the
mhm,
algorithm behind it is very, very smart. Also, Robin Laws wrote, I think, a lot, not necessarily
mhm.
all, but a lot of the quests and
Yeah.
adventures and incidents for it. So, and he knows his RuneQuest.
Mhm.
It's really good. I mean, it looks a little bit dated, but it's still one of the high points of text-based interactive fiction.
Which is interesting because I got it and I played it a few times. I'm like, I don't get it. It didn't. I bounced off it, which which is probably just me. Which suggests that I'm looking for something different out of Ryan North's, which I like, and not the full semi-computer game activity. Maybe it's just nostalgia for a time in my life where I'm like, let's see what happens. Oh, I died.
Yeah.
80
80
days.
Patchwork
days.
Flair's calling out 80 days. 80 days is absolutely great. It's
What's 80 days? This one I don't know.
It's a reinterpretation of Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh, nifty.
Except you play Passepartout rather than Phileas Fogg. And it's a pansexual Passepartout. The storytelling is great. The graphics are great. The reinterpretation of the world is this is not Jules Verne's world. This is elements of steampunk, but really smart. So there's a game element. The game element is, can you get around the world in 80 days with limited resources? And there's a repacking your luggage sub game that doesn't work, and it's tedious. But the storytelling and the writing, it's Meg Jayanth, who is a monster of the British indie games writing scene. Incredibly good. I'm trying to think what else she's done recently. There was a piece about her, I think, in The Guardian.
Wow.
Basically because she won't work for AAA companies anymore because she's been treated so badly as a woman of color. She's just, overlooked the whole time, and her choices. And when she goes, no, this is degrading, this is objectionable for these reasons, she just gets overruled. So she won't work for those companies anymore. But she is so good. And 80 days, I think it's ridiculously cheap these days. Really, really worth your time. It's fun to play, but there's so much going on in the background of the world building. It is a delight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I put it up there with King of Dragon Pass. If I was doing my Desert Island discs, the two of them would be up there.
Oh wow, yeah. As we begin to close out this hour, this live stream, I do want to mention, if you're interested in interactive fiction and text games in general, this is a beautiful book. 50 years of text games. It has a section on King of Dragons Pass. I believe it has something on 80 Days as well. It also talks about Zork, Choose Your Own Adventure.
And you get a slipcover, damn.
Well, if you backed it on Kickstarter, I think now there's a print on demand version of it. But I got my book, mine copied through the library. So there's.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, so you've got the slipcover. Oh.
No, I just got an interlibrary loan copy.
Got it. ILL like a sucker.
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Choose Your Own Adventure is an important, because I think it informed a lot of game designers about like how to think about branching narratives, which is like at a core of real, like, telling stories through games. Like you have to think about multiple paths, and that garden of forking paths, and
okay,
wind up,
yeah.
And my alternate universe where it became this legitimate mainstream part of huge literary culture. I'm like, well, the thing I imagine that was never really dug into all that deeply with the books as they were, because they were sort of genre, and they're like, we're going to just put everything off onto the reader. Mm-hmm. But when you're a novelist, you have this tremendous pressure to have everything, for there to be this underlying structure, and things happen at the right time, and there's a rhythm to the development of events and the order in which things are revealed, and the way and the context in which they're revealed, which I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm being a hater, but I don't think the choose your own adventure people thought that deeply about the invisible musicality of their plot structure. But I'm like, man, if you were really, really good, you probably could make it so that there was more of a flow and rhythm to a choose your own adventure or choosable path adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sort of like one of the unanswered questions, it's something that still has to be resolved. Sorry, James.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, back in the day, there were people doing some really clever stuff with structure. Carl Sargent, in one of the Fighting Fantasy books, Night Dragon, I think. It's a simple plot. You're the hero. There's a dragon essentially at the top of the mountain. There's a fairly obvious path. So you, and the dragon goes, and that, oh, now I have to play again. Okay, how do I get around this? And okay, oh, there's a shield, or there's a sword, and you have to take all the side quests, but the side quests aren't always obvious. They're not necessarily the obvious choices, and it plays into the whole thing of this is a game that you are supposed to play over and over again. It's really nice, and Carl would have knocked this out in a long weekend. Carl, I wrote Sonic the Hedgehog novels with him back in the day. Carl could write a trilogy of fantasy novels in a month. Which is not quite Moorcock levels, but then he wasn't taking quite as many drugs as Moorcock, though not far off. I can say that he's dead now. Everybody knew it. I mean, people have been experimenting with this stuff for ages. I would really love. I mean, I think Kim Newman's is really interesting. I would love to see a great structure. So I'd love to have seen the Ulipians do more with it. But they were very much, okay, we've tried this idea. This is how it works. On to the next thing, rather than polishing it and polishing and polishing it. I'd love to. What authors? Name an author you would love to have seen experiment with the form. I'll just throw in at this point. Harry Harrison did do a "You Are the Stainless Steel Rat" book, and it was awful because his art was clearly not in it.
I'd say, what was the guy who wrote The Crying of Lot 49?
Pynchon.
Thomas Pynchon, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd
Jesus.
say Thomas Pynchon just to see, because
Be
I'm
a
like
big
this.
one.
I'm like this guy's gonna take a big swing.
Oh, yeah. I want to see Machiavelli's. The crunch, the level of like King of Dragons Past would have would have nothing on the politics of Machiavelli's interactive fiction. I do want to close this off with the one of the games I learned about from 50 Years of Text Games, which is a Galatea, which is interactive fiction game from 2001 Best of Show. Because it's entirely like most interactive fiction, Zork, Adventure, etc., was all focused on puzzle solving, right? There's a problem and you have to resolve it. This is a conversation. It is entirely dialogue with Galatea, who is the statue brought to life in a museum gallery, and you talk to her, and there are multiple endings, and you get to find out what she thinks of things, and she can change your mind or you can change her mind, and so it's changing the spotlight from puzzles to like characterization and dialogue. Was like in 2000, like, holy shit, you could do that with interactive fiction. Like, it was a very complex game, but it was all under the hood because of the way the dialogue was so naturalistic and flowed so well.
Hard parts making it look easy.
Yeah, exactly. So this is still like a all narrative, storytelling, interactive fiction. It's still very much in its infancy. There's still so much out there. Anyone here listening to this can be come up with something new and that no one's ever thought of before, executed well. You know, like the first Choose Your Own Adventure was in 1930, and then it took until the 70s before it became popular, despite a couple experiments. So Short's stuff on storylets in interactive fiction is interesting and useful, and I think it informs the design of 80 Days. So there you go. So yeah, dialogue does be hard. It does, and that's why this game won awards, because it was done so well.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's before we go, we do want to mention that we have finished our Heart the City Beneath episode, and it should be up soon, and we'll send out a link on the Kickstarter to backers so they get the private RSS feed so they can listen to it a month early. And we're going to be working on our next episode is going to be Delta Green Convergence, which has been recently re-released. It was the original Delta Green adventure, and now it's been re-released, and we get to read it.
The game where you play federal agents trying to run con games on virgins. I may not be remembering.
Yeah, no, yeah, well, yeah. There's like an alien involved in it. It's
J.G. Ballard interactive fiction would have been.
Oh, or Borges, man.
Well, Borges.
Yeah.
Borges almost did.
He kind of
Italo
did.
Calvino.
Oh, yeah.
Castle of Cross Destinies. Again, he almost did. He talks about people telling stories with tarot decks in a castle where it's silent. So they tell each other who they are and about their lives by playing tarot cards.
I never read that one.
There's a follow-up, I can't remember, but yeah, it's lovely. It's minor Calvino, but it's beautiful. But yeah, clearly there's a lot of people who've been kind of grasping around the concept, and then the concept actually appeared, and they were kind of, no.
Wait,
which is such a shame.
Yeah,
Space vampire, really?
Yeah. PG Woodhouse. I think a Jeeveson was an actual Woodhouse. PG would, Jeeveson was the story, or even lesser Woodhouse. Other Woodhouse characters would have been. Again, it would be the situation where you are given 4 choices, all of which look logical, all of which are wrong.
I realize
it would be brilliant. It would be so funny.
I want to see a Shirley Jackson novel, interactive fiction. That would be really haunting in many ways.
Choose your own damnation.
Yeah. That's the way we're gonna do this. Choose your own damnation. 2024. Get weird with it. Again, thanks to all our backers. Thanks to everybody who's watching or listening later on. We're working away, and I don't know. We'll announce our next live stream on the Discord and put it up there. So we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
See some of you at Expo.
Yes. Yeah. UK Game Expo. James will be there. Join our Discord. Bye.